Hey everyone, I got a special video for you today from the Northwest Baseball Convention in Portland. We're having a great time down here Saturday, and I was able to get a minute to talk with Greg Swenson from AstroTurf right now, and he's a former Division I college baseball coach, high school baseball coach for a long, long time. I've been really influenced by him and his ideas throughout the years, and his insight into the game and into players. And so what I've asked him to do is just to give you a quick 2 to 3 minute message and conversation for high school athletes as they're headed into the season and what might be important for them and how they can become really successful. And to hear a message from a guy like Coach Swenson would be pretty incredible. So, what do you think as a high school coach and a college coach for, let's say, for the average high school player, what would be the best piece of advice for you to give the average high school player?
To have great intent with everything they do. I mean, every practice you show up, what's your purpose? What's your mission? We used to carry around a 3x5 index card in our back pocket that would state our daily mission and also maybe some goals that we might have for the day or for our season, an affirmation or some sort of reminder of what it is I'm out here for. And so as baseball gets going and you got the 2-3 hour practice and you start losing track of time and where you're at, pull that 3x5 card out of your back pocket, read the message, get back to what it is you're supposed to do, understand that what you're doing within this aspect of the team. So what's my role, what's my responsibility as a team player, but then also let's figure out how I get better, right? We get 3 hours a day, 6 days a week, 18 hours a week. You're not going to get a lot of great baseball out of that. So it's our job as a baseball player, if I'm going to be an all-conference player, if I'm going to be an all-state player, if I'm going to be a collegiate player, I've got to find the time to put the work in and do it, and I can't just rely on the 3 hours of practice. Bill Parcells used to say that practice isn't where you get better, it's where you show me how much better you've gotten from the last practice to today. And so what are you doing in between? What's your intent? What's your purpose? The great ones always have purpose. They don't just show up and go with the flow. They have a purpose. They're driven to what they do. And the ones that I've been fortunate to coach that have been either all-conference, all-Americans, major leaguers, their purpose was off the charts. There was never a day where I had to remind them what to do. If anything, I almost had to slow them down.
So kids are self-driven.
Most
matter what you're
of the
doing?
successful ones, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, in anything you do in life, whether it's music, whether it's art, whether
Yeah.
it's your business leaders, your sports leaders, they're self-driven, they're self-motivated.
Absolutely.
The coaching aspect of things, there's the best. There's 300 studies, I've tweeted this out before, but 300 studies show that the best performers often don't listen to their coach, and it's because they're driven by what their purpose is.
Yeah.
They don't need a coach to tell them to go out and work hard. They don't need a coach to tell them to be great. Their whole purpose is to be great. So all we're trying to do as a coach is to figure out how to manage that, how to guide them, how to make suggestions that allow them to become the best that they can be. A loophole, a trap that I see with players all the time is they try to be somebody else. They want to be better than that player, better than just be the best you can be and be really good at being the best. Someone actually was just telling me at this convention about know who you are, right? If you're a quote on a scale of 1 to 10, if you're a 5 player, be the best 5 player you can be, and then work on being a 6. But master the 5 before you become the 6. If you're an 8, then master the 8 before you become a 9. And so just understand what you are, be really good at it, master that position that you're at, and then move forward. Don't try to jump and skip steps. You skip steps, it just becomes a real mess, especially in baseball where it's already a struggle with the failure.
So maybe one or two more questions real quick. If you've been in the college game and associated with at the national level with great college coaches at all levels, as a recruiter and a college coach, let's say you show up at the field at 3 o'clock. And then what are you looking for when you walk on the field and you're looking for a college baseball player? Maybe it's a JC, Division III, Division I guy. What are the things that you're going to see that are going to make you want that guy?
It just depends on the position, right? If I'm watching a pitcher, I want to see what their pregame routine looks like. Do they have a routine to it? Do they take care of themselves? Do they take care of their arm? Do they go through a proper warm-up protocol? Do they play catch for a length of time? Does their bullpen have some sort of rhythm and rhyme to it where they're throwing fastballs and getting feel for fastball, then breaking ball, and then change up, and then they combine it? Those type of kids who are maybe a little bit more advanced understand it. That's not a common sight in high school baseball, especially. A lot of times they rush, they get off the bus, they 10 minutes to game time, and it's like rush through it. So I understand that aspect, but in that perspective, the pitcher, I'm looking to see what kind of routine they have. And then when they do compete, I honestly like watching kids fail and see how they handle the failure. Is it a guy that's going to go blame his teammates? Is he putting his palms up like what's going on? Is he giving the leaky tire like, when he doesn't get a strike? If those are the guys that we'll try to stay away from. Those guys are coach killers a lot of times.
That's incredible advice.
They're looking for somebody to blame rather than just own it. And one of my favorite players at Washington State was a kid who I went and saw pitch in Denver, and he ended up losing the game. But right after the game, he went up and shook the umpire's hand, and I just thought it was a high character moment for him. He came to Washington State, had a lot of great moments for us. But just in that moment of adversity where a lot of people are feeling sorry for themselves, he had enough character to go up to that umpire and shake the guy's hand for doing the best that umpire could do. And by no means was it great, but he at least wasn't putting blame. For infielders, I'm just watching how they carry themselves. Do they communicate with their peers? Do they communicate with with the infielders, with the outfielders? How do they carry their glove? Do they carry their glove with authority? Do they have their chest out, or do they walk meek and meager and a little bit timid? Those type of things, really can stand out with fielders. And then as hitters, do they have an approach? Where's their? Do they understand what their strike zone is? Are they looking for their pitch? Or are they just up there 9-1-1 swinging, which is swinging at the first thing that's coming at them out of fear? There's all sorts of things that, if you really break it down, will separate. Besides the statistics of how fast they run, how far they hit, how hard they throw. I mean, you're getting into college baseball and you're competing against guys with like physical skills. So what's going to separate them is the ability to handle themselves in adverse situations. And again, baseball is a game of life. We deal with adversity all the time. We're always going to deal with hardships and struggles in life. It's not going to be great and rosy. And that's why baseball is such a valuable sport for kids to play, because if you can learn to handle that failure, learn to be a good teammate, then eventually down the road you'll be a good associate, a good colleague, cohort, husband, wife, whatever it is that you're moving on to in your life, and you can learn so much through baseball.
So you kind of already answered my third question, which was, how do players overcome that adversity, or what do they got to do, or what are you looking for that? But how about I'll just change my last question here, just to try to get kids to think, how am I successful on a daily basis? Having a plan, being disciplined and following through with that, like you said, having an approach. The last question, I think, so when a kid has a bad day or a player has a bad day and they're unsure about how to handle themselves on the field, or what can they do off the field? So let's say the game's over, or what can they do maybe off the field that's not totally physically baseball related to generate that positive imagery, or to generate that positive thinking that'll bring them back to the next day, and as you said, be better that next day?
Well, so a big factor of just, we are who we think we are. We'll never outperform our self-image. So if we see ourselves as something and it doesn't produce the results that we truly want, then we have to change how we see ourselves. We have to create a different self-image. We create images by what we say to ourselves, by how we visualize ourselves, etc., like you were talking about. So if I'm going to change my self-image, if I'm going to change what I want myself to look like, be like as an athlete, even as a human, then I've got to make better choices and do things a little bit differently. And most importantly, I've got to think a little differently. I've got to choose to think about things in a different perspective. A big part of that is just deciding what's important to you. And if I can create something that's important to me, and whether it's baseball or, again, if it's classroom oriented, then I can have a really good chance of changing how I see myself, and therefore performing at a higher level, crashing through this false ceiling that I've created for myself from this image that I created. To do that, we need to talk better to ourselves. Now, I believe during a game that there's a thing called effective self-talk. And so that effective self-talk is whatever it takes to motivate yourself. If it means getting on yourself to perform better, then do so. I've had a lot of great athletes that would yell at themselves in a dugout and then go out there and strike the side out. So I'm not saying about being positive all the time, but after the performance is over, after the game is over, then we need to focus on the positives, and we need to really isolate things. I was telling a coach today about the 10 gift theory, where if you got 10 gifts and 3 of them are a car, a house, and maybe a vacation home, and 7 of them are empty boxes, which gifts are you going to think about? Well, you're going to most likely think about those 3, but in baseball, we think about those 7 empty boxes all the time. And so our job is to flip it, start focusing on the 3 gifts that we have on a daily basis. So maybe in a performance, I went 0 for 4, but maybe I had 2 really good swings, and in baseball, sometimes it doesn't always work out. Well, I'm going to focus on that. And that positive self-talk, that positive imagery that you create post-game throughout the day, throughout the night, throughout the next day, gets that self-image to rise a little bit, gives us a chance to become a better you. And so when we're working on becoming a better you, then there's nothing more important than that. So as I tell people all the time when I do clinics and presentations, is one of the things that I try to do with my kids, my daughter and my son, is when I, tuck them in at night, is just remind them to focus on what they did great that day. And, academics, athletics, whatever it is, focus on what they did great. Because once they do that, they put that image in their brain at night, then the subconscious is going to grab onto that, work on it as they dream, as they think at night. And whatever we can make important to the subconscious will grab onto it and work 24/7 to make it a reality for us. And so if we start having better intent, we start focusing on the positives, we start focusing on what it is that we want to become and make better choices and change the imagery that we have for ourselves, then our ceiling goes through the roof. We create a better, we create a higher expectation. We get closer to our potential, and it just kind of is a self-fulfilling cycle of positiveness. We think differently. We have more positive results. We get better confidence. We have better results again, and we just kind of keeps looping around by this positive. The negative can happen too. You start doing that negatively, and the same thing's going to happen. We create this self-fulfilling prophecy of I'm not good in math, I'm not good in sports, and that'll happen. So without a doubt, the best thing you can do after a performance is after you flush it, give yourself a little bit of time to if you're frustrated, be frustrated, flush it, but then get to the positives. Start focusing on, and parents, the same thing. Don't just get in the car and start harping on your kid about, you were 3 for 4, but you got a strikeout, because all you're doing is harping on the strikeout. Who cares? It's baseball. You hit 750 today. And as what I've learned is the player is the worst critic as it is. And so if all you're doing is reminding them of all their failures, well, then you're creating that negative cycle for them. And then that just keeps putting them in a downward spiral. So, give us some time. Telling someone what they did great right after a failure, right after a loss, isn't necessarily going to come true. They're going to see through it. But after you've given some time, and especially right before you go to bed, when you're about to fall asleep, start focusing on the things you did great. And then when you wake up, take a couple minutes to focus on the things that you're going to do great that day. And all of a sudden you'll start just seeing an increase in image, increase in self-image, and increase in confidence. And then it just becomes this cycle of positivity that will really carry you through a lot of adverse times and really let you, again, go back to being the best you can be.
That is incredible. So I'm going to recap this, and I don't know if I'm going to recap it very well, but for all you players out there, it's have a plan.
Yeah.
Have a plan and execute your plan, and have an approach and be disciplined with it, and positive self-talk, and really reflect on the best you.
Absolutely.
And continue to focus on that best you.
Right.
And what was it again? The gifts, the 10 gifts.
Yeah, you got 10 gifts you get 10 birthday gifts, and you got 3 really cool ones: a PS4, a house, a car, and you got 7 empty boxes. Why in baseball do we focus on the 7 empty boxes? Let's focus on the 3 gifts. Understand that the game's really hard. The best closers in baseball, the average big league closer only saves 2 out of 3 games, right? But we always compare ourselves to Mariano in 9 out of 10 games, right? Yeah. And so, if an average big leaguer is 2 out of 3, then what's a high school athlete? A big leaguer only hits his spot 24% of the time. So, as a coach or a player, as a parent, we expect our pitcher to hit the spot like 75% of the time. It's just unreal. Yeah. So, do we have high expectations? Absolutely. That's what motivates us. That's what gets us out of bed and going. But let's have a little bit of thought process to it, and let's really focus on the positives when it's all said and done.
I got to tell you, I am so appreciative of your time, and you're a valuable asset to baseball in the Pacific Northwest, and you have been for quite some time. And you baseball players who are watching this, and you parents who are getting ready for this, and even you coaches, watch this thing 3 times. And I know we're recording it right now, but I'm really honored to be here with you, and appreciative for what you've done for us today. And if you want to follow something motivating and inspiring and intelligent and informational, it's at the Swens57.
It is. I don't know if it's always inspiring, but it's entertaining. It's entertaining.
So
Yeah.
thank you, Coach Swenson,
you bet.
from the
Thank
Northwest
you.
Baseball Convention.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Thanks for all you do as well.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, the state series is a great series.
It
So
is.
if you get picked, go play.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Take care. Enjoy.